Hi everyone, it's Rachel Thexton, Rachel Thexton Connects. This is Rachel Gets Personal. This is a monologue that I'm doing whenever I feel like it, actually. And it's just me and you chatting about, well, I chat and I want to hear from you about what I'm discussing. And I have some things on my mind, so I thought I would share them with you. This is all kind of based around the fact that we live in a pretty toxic culture. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Gabor Mate's book, The Myth of Normal. I'll talk about that in a second. But first I just wanted to touch on something. Indigenous peoples here in Canada. I find it really odd and disturbing that in the United States, hundreds and thousands of people marched and protested alongside African American people, rightfully so, for Black Lives Matter and for various injustices that took place in the United States. And yet here, where are the hundreds and thousands of non-Indigenous people alongside the Indigenous peoples? All of the news we hear about discrimination in healthcare, with law enforcement, with authority, all of the wrongs, the tremendous shames of the past, non-Indigenous people in Canada, we should be there fighting with Indigenous peoples. And I always wondered why that was. Is it because, North America has kind of taken this love for hip hop music and African American style and, certain parts of culture, sometimes taking it as their own. And we haven't done so, mostly because of lack of knowledge of Indigenous culture. Is that why? Because it's cool to support African Americans. Well, you know what? It's pretty vital and amazing and definitely cool to stand alongside Indigenous people, to fight for reconciliation and steps towards that, and to fight against the injustices that they experience time and time again. That's always on my mind. I work with several Indigenous groups, 2 clients, and I have a fantastic guest coming up on the podcast. His name is Stephen Stark. And his story, I haven't heard it all yet, but I know parts of it, and I cannot wait to share it with you next week. He's an Indigenous man from Thexton Nation, and his story of facing adversity and just turning his life into such a success is incredibly powerful. And that's a podcast episode that I'm so looking forward to digging into and sharing with you. So just something to think about. Let's stand with the Indigenous peoples, our friends, our colleagues, and fight with them. And, this is a place we should be. Locked, holding hands. Those are steps towards healing and reconciliation, understanding and learning. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that are a little bit, taboo, but I think they need to be discussed in a toxic culture in which we're in. So Trump just won the election. I'm not going to talk about that too much. I think a lot of people are talking about that, so you can tune in to hear various opinions. I find it terrifying, but I'll leave it at that. I find it I find it strange that there are topics that are taboo. I mean, we talk about everything. We talk about things that I can't believe we talk about. Yet there are some things that you just kind of don't touch. And I'm going to touch a couple of those things today. The first one is faith. Religion and faith are two separate things in my mind. So religion to me is a man-made, very imperfect, church-based, always church-based, sometimes very imperfect way of being. Faith is something altogether different. Faith, to me, is when you have a relationship with a higher being. So whether that be you're a Christian and you have that relationship with God and Jesus, and you attend a church in which you trust and believe in, or perhaps you're Sikh, perhaps you attend temple. I believe Mass is on Friday nights for Catholics. To me, faith is really relying on that higher being, because as humans, we're so imperfect. There is no way that we can live in this imperfect world, this toxic culture, without relying and handing off some of those really, really, really challenging pieces to a higher being, whoever you see that as. I'm a Christian. I see that as God. And we attend church, and I'm so inspired by it, and it all comes back to love. It all comes back to thinking of others before yourself, kindness, respect, compassion, our relationship with God. Looking a little bit deeper into the Bible than perhaps what has been done in the past. And as I've done that, I've realized that there's much more to it than I ever thought. I grew up as a pastor's granddaughter and went to church many times a week and resisted church and faith for most of my adult life. I attended, but it's only really in the past year or so that I've really dug my heels into it, because I'm truly finding that there's some things as an imperfect human I can't manage on my own. I just can't. So I teach my kids, if there's something that's too hard for you, you take it, you wrap it up, you hand it off, and you let God lead on that one. And whatever faith or higher being that you believe in, I think that's a really good way of doing that. And I don't know enough about other faiths to be able to speak to them, but we're trying to get our kids into faith-based learning, as I've said before. There are a few things, certainly within the Christian lifestyle, that I might not necessarily agree with. Certainly, I'm a fairly liberal person on the political side. But my heart is good, I believe. And I have a relationship with God that's mine and mine alone. I pray, I read the Bible, I meditate on the Bible, I meditate on trying to be better, on trying to rise above when I want to be angry, when I want to act in a way in which I won't be proud of. So, yeah, that's changed things for me over the past less than a year or so. The thing is men's mental health. men's mental health, we always say, men need to come forward. And I saw a book in the new release section. It was by former Toronto Raptors player, I believe, DeMar DeRozan. It's called Above the Noise, My Story of Chasing Calm. And he talks about, I have not read the book, but I plan to, his depression. And, there are others, Trevor Noah, Ryan Reynolds, both with ADHD. And so many more. And you don't have to be famous to have respect for speaking out. I've struggled with depression, anxiety, and PTSD, trauma, and I work through those things via various outlets, and will continue to stay well. And I think most of us do. I just want to read a couple quick little passages from Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal. So he says here on page 20, someone without the marks of trauma would be an outlier in our society. It's a pretty big statement. He also says, trauma, until we work through it, keeps us stuck in the past, robbing us of the present moment's riches, limiting who we can be. And then he quotes Peter Levine. Trauma is perhaps the most avoided, ignored, belittled, denied, misunderstood, and untreated cause of human suffering. It's pretty, pretty meaningful stuff. And I respect Dr. Gabor Mate a lot. I think one thing that he does is he surely researches a lot. He has worked with so many people, and so many people who have had such a tough go of it in life. Serious traumas, multiple traumas. And this is a great read. And I think understanding that many of us have had traumas, most of us have, some more intense than others, that we have to deal with them. And many of them are men. I mean, women, men have to deal with these traumas. And I think often they're not. Are we still there? Are we still in this place where boys don't cry and we just stuff it down and, we just oppress it until it barfs all over the people we love? I hope not, because, I think a strong man like DeMar DeRozan, who comes out and writes his story, people who come out who say, I'm struggling. I've had challenges with depression, anxiety, whatever it may be. It takes bravery, and it shouldn't, because at this point in time, in 2024, we are living in a culture that is so backwards. I mean, all the values are just like, whether you're involved in faith or not, I think we can all agree that things are pretty upside down. And our mental health can struggle, and that includes men. So whether it be, however you want to do it, therapy or faith or exercise and diet and, all of those things combined together or other. I can't wait to hear from Stephen Stark as to, how he faced his traumas. But men's mental health is so important because men are often part of a foundation of the family, right? They're a father, they're a wife, they're a son, they're a brother. So for them to be well in their mental health is so vital, just as it is for a woman. And I think it's really important that we get out of this thinking that, men are, these tough leaders that just never struggle. They do. They stuff it down. They compartmentalize. But that doesn't last. And then troubles arise again and again. And that can happen with women too. Surely, definitely. But I think men more often because of the stigma. I wanted to share with you a few of my favorite vinyls that I'm listening to right now. So you might know from my online posts. Music, writing, reading fills me up. Music, it's the lyrics that get me. Zach Bryan is really just on the mind lately. I can't get his music off my mind. And actually, my husband and I are going to Tacoma to see his concert in November, and I can't wait. So I have these two vinyls, American Heartbreak and his newest one that I listen to quite often. And it's his writing that just floors me. It's so simple, yet so meaningful. Amazing music. Leon Bridges. This is full of love, vulnerability. It's calming to me. He has such a talent. His voice is beautiful. The music is one of a kind. You know it right when you hear it. I actually just found out about this artist, and I really, really love this vinyl. It's awesome. Going back a few years, a favorite, always is Otis Redding. I just love this album so much. Sitting on the dock of the bay, obviously, is one that just really just centers me and stops me for a second. I encourage you to Otis Redding. There's about 4 of them that I love, and I have a collection down here. Seattle-based Macklemore. I was listening to his albums nonstop for about 2.5 years. His newest one is called Ben. I haven't listened to it for a while, but it's a fantastic album. He's Seattle-based. He is open about his recovery, and he also is open about his mental health. Regardless, he is an incredibly talented writer, and raps, and he's very honest about political issues. He talks a lot about where does he fit into the hip-hop culture as a white rapper, and how does he approach supporting African Americans as a white American. I think that's really interesting. So I want to leave it on an upbeat tone. I always ask my podcast guests their favorite nonprofits at the end of every episode. And they share some amazing ones with me, and I always share them with listeners. And I have a few to share today. Vokra, my cat, may rest in peace, lived with us for over 10 years. Kiki. BCSBCA. And then there are 2, I seem very, very biased because they're my clients, but honestly, they are just so amazing. I'm so blessed. I'm so fortunate to work with them. Options Community Services. This organization is phenomenal. They do it all. They are dedicated, passionate team. They support newcomers. They support those who are struggling with substances via a new home detox program. They have wraparound services for those in supportive housing, such as a paramedic clinic, on-site, an on-site pharmacy, a wellness program with cooking classes and fitness classes. They have programming for adults with physical disabilities, children with disabilities. the list goes on and on. They support those with finding homes and finding resources. They're amazing. Options Community Services based in Surrey. The second is Access. They are an Indigenous nonprofit organization. Access is they support urban Indigenous peoples here in Vancouver with employment, education, meeting them where they are and helping them to reach their goals. And they do such amazing work and unique programs with partners like BCIT and ICBC and Ecall 911. I mean, there's so many. And Lynn White is the CEO. I also work a lot with Blair Bellarose, who is the Director of Operations. And their work with Indigenous peoples is phenomenal. I mean, they support youth with showing them that they can do anything they want, helping them to get those courses they need, get their driver's license. If they don't have that, you would be shocked by how many Indigenous young people do not have a driver's license. We take that for granted. Fashion, makeup, they are responsible for 41% of all Indigenous apprenticeships in BC's Lower Mainland in the trades. And I mean, they just do so much amazing work. Access. They're based in, headquartered in West Vancouver, but they have offices across Greater Vancouver. Anything related to mental health, obviously very important to me. Center for Addiction for Mental Health in Toronto, I volunteered at when I lived there. Coast Mental Health. CEO is currently the amazing Kira McDonald, who has a true passion for the cause and just a heart for people. So some nonprofits that I really respect greatly. Anyway, it might be a toxic world, a little bit broken, but we don't have to be. We can come together. And thank you for listening to these discussions. And thank you for providing feedback. I really do love your engagement so much. And please tune in to my next episode with Stephen Stark. You are, going to be blown away, and it's going to be a great one. Tune in. Talk soon.